The following is brought to you by Cranbrook Television Limited.
Welcome to Round Town.
1978 Sam Steele Days Parade.
1980, there's a period when
Welcome to Rocky Hockey.
This is my guest, Roy Orbison.
We now join the following program, already in progress.
Georgia Brown.
Sweet Georgia Brown.
Sweet Georgia Brown. And it was coming through a speaker, and I stood there and I was popping my fingers, and a fella said, "You like that?" I said, "Love it." So he said, "Here," and he gave me the record, a little 45. I said, "Is it mine?" He said, "Sure, you can have it." So I ran home with it and put it on a record player, and my father and mother were sitting there, and I started dancing around and showing them the record and letting them listen. And that was when it all started. I wanted to dance again.
Was there an influence from the family, or to stay with it, or to
no? My father made all my costumes. He did all the sewing. My mother started me. She wanted me to take tap dancing, but they were smart enough to realize that when I didn't want to dance, there's no sense in forcing you. Mm-hmm. And then when I wanted to dance, they just said go, and I went downstairs and practiced, and I worked for 5 hours a day for 2 years, and I merged as a tap dancer when I came up from the basement, and it was I practiced. I started when I was 12, I guess, to practice, and at 14 I was the dancer that I am today.
Entertainers, then, who were the influences? Who helped you along the way?
Dancers, I would say, Bill Robinson, because my mother and father took me to see the Bill Robinson movies with Shirley Temple. I would say the Shirley Temple movies that Bill Robinson played in. Then years later, Nat King Cole came through with a big show with Sarah Vaughan, and he brought a lot of dancers with him, like Stumpin' Stumpy and Peg Leg Bates and Teddy Hale, and all of the great dancers came through, and I watched them dance. And then my mother and father worked at the Brass Rail, and it was a nightclub, and a lot of the entertainers and the drummers used to be dancers that couldn't make as dancers, but they learned. It's drumming and dancing are very similar, so they would show me little steps, and I picked up an awful lot from them, and plus I think that was the big influence. And then I went to Toronto and would watch some of the dancers.
Was Toronto then the glitter and the glitz? I mean, this is where you had to go.
That was the hub. That was the big apple. And Billy O'Connor, when I was in London, and Billy came through with a big show with Juliet, and they put me on the show. It was from Western Fair, and they put me on the show. And Billy's manager said, "Would you like to come down to Toronto and do the Pick the Stars?" So I said, "Yeah, okay." So I went down and I went on Pick the Stars, and I didn't win, but it didn't matter. I did Pick the Stars. Paul Anka did Pick the Stars and didn't win, so it didn't. But I did Pick the Stars, and then from that, Billy started managing me, and he took me to Montreal at the big nightclubs, the Morocco Club and the El Morocco, and all of the big clubs, and I started doing more and more television shows, and that's how it started.
Someone told you, or it was advised years ago, that perhaps tap dancing was on its way out, and you should broaden your horizons.
That's right. I used to go down to the old Casino Theater, which was at that time it was a burlesque house, and I used to do 4 shows a day.
Were you old enough?
Oh yeah, I was. Okay. I was 17 years old. I used to go down, but at that time you used to watch the variety acts. They used to have variety acts, and every week they used to have a dancer come in and open the show. That was and I used to go down to watch the dancers work. And a man by the name of Derby Wilson came down, and I went backstage and we talked, and the more we talked, the more he said, look, he said, Joey, he said, you have to do one of two things. Either get out of the business now, he said, because it'll kill you, it'll hurt you bad, or he said,
physically, was he?
no,
was
he mentally. He was
Okay.
talking mentally. He said, because he said, tap dancing is almost a forgotten art now, and it's being phased out. So he said, I would advise you to become a song and dance man. So I said, well, what do you mean? So he told me, he said, sing a little songs, and I said, okay. So I took his advice and started to sing. I almost lost my job when I first sang, because it was so bad. But it worked out, because over a period of years, you get better at your craft, I was told it doesn't matter how good you sing, it's how well you perform your song, and that's the main thing. He said, Louis Armstrong isn't a great singer as far as singing is concerned, but he has such a personality, and he sang with such heart that everybody loved him.
Technically, it didn't matter.
Technically, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So that's how I used to think.
Yeah. You've been around the globe, literally.
Yeah, I started to do world touring. I did the CNE Grandstand show, and from that, I was asked to do a tour in Japan. So I went over there for 3.5 months, and the first tour, and they asked me back. Tom Nomura was my manager over there, my agent.
What was it like performing there? I mean,
In Japan?
You went to Japan. You also went to China, but it wasn't mainland China.
No, it was Taipei.
Taipei.
Yeah.
What was the reaction of the audiences?
Well, in Japan, in Tokyo, you work to huge crowds, and also you work with 20-piece bands behind you, and you work on stages that lift up and spin around, and it's some of the nightclubs, like the Mikado, had 1,000 waiters and waitresses in it, and 600 in their show, and
And here's this, so to speak, little boy from
That's
London,
right,
Ontario,
yeah.
Canada.
And
was it intimidating to you as well? Or?
no, it's funny. I've never been intimidated. As far as I always thought straightforward. I had to do a show, boom, I did it, and never thought of, oh, they're going to be. It's going to be different or anything like that. It was different. Like you walk up to and you put your music down, and the conductor said doesn't speak English, and he looks at the music, but that's universal, and he says, no tempo ne, and I said tempo and he says, okay, ichi ni song shi, and he starts, and everything is so different. Like if you call a cab, you don't say, cabby, come here. That means go away. That means come here. You go.
So you obviously spent a lot of time by yourself.
Oh yes.
or waiting for cabs.
Yeah, waiting for cabs, and you're saying, come here, and the guy says, so sorry, go to see Mama San, and they drive. And they drive on the left side of the road, like in France, the same thing. And
but you were received well.
Oh yes, they were wonderful, wonderful. I worked in Sapporo up in the north, in Hokkaido district, when it was you got off the plane and it was snowing, just like Canada, and it was they couldn't speak any English there, and by that time I learned to speak some Japanese, and it was fun because I would they asked me what I would want to eat by, and I said katsudon buri kudasai, so they katsudon, it's a food, excuse me, and a Japanese dish, and so a rice and some sort of a pork, and so I ate that, and they with chopsticks, and they all applauded me.
Interesting.
It was fun.
Experiences you've had. You were in Peru?
In Lima.
In Lima, in South America?
The government invited me down there as the one of the Canadian representatives, and I was Mr. Maple Leaf of Canada, and everything. Frank Hamilton was my boss, and he said, "I'm going to outfit you from head to toe in the Maple Leaf tartan plaid." And he did it literally. I had a hat, I had shorts, name it, suits and luggage and ties and bow ties and cummerbunds, everything, So I was always
And the Argyle socks were
The whole-
Maple Leaf Quail.
everything. And I gave out Maple Leaf pins, and I was always chaperoned. And every place you went, you represented the Canadian government, so they chaperoned you. And even at press conferences, you went in, and it was one of the things that was amazing at the press conference. They asked, one of the women said, "Do all the men in Canada wear dresses?" And I said, "No, no, we don't wear dresses."
You better straighten them out quick.
Yeah, and they said, so they said, well, I said, wait a minute. I said, this is the Maple Leaf tartan plaid. It's not a Scottish community. They thought that we wore kilts. And I said, this is the Maple Leaf tartan plaid, and this is the plaid is the colors are the seasons of our seasons, like the. And I said, that's the only similarity that of the tartan. And so they got a big kick out of that.
You had an audience with the president.
Oh, yes. I did a series of shows for his sister, and I didn't know. She was just a very nice lady, but she was like the Albert Schweitzer of Peru. She looked after so many children, and children, I have a very soft spot for children. I'm the dancing salesman on the Mr. Rogers show, and I've done a lot of children's shows. So I did a lot of cancer clinic shows and orphanages and things like that. And she said, "Would you like to meet my brother?" I said, "Love to." And I didn't know who her brother was. She said, "I'll arrange it." So the next thing, the ambassador of Canada phoned. He said, "We have an audience with the Presidente." So I said, "Wonderful." So we drove up in a big car with the Canadian flag flying, and the guards came out, and they had the Prussian army helmets with like the old German with the point, and the big peps on and the big sword and the machine gun.
A real machine.
Yeah, a real one. And they pointed also, and we drove through into the courtyard, and then the changing of the guards, and they had big black boots and belts and guns and everything, and they were doing the goose step. And I said, "Oh my goodness!" And then they
now you can't tell me that you weren't a little intimidated.
Oh yes, yes, definitely. I thought, oh, and so we walked by them, and they snapped to attention, and they saluted the ambassador, but they saluted like this. We walked by, and then we went into the palace, and it had two huge tables with gold statues, two gold statues, one of Cortez and one of an Inca, and high-backed red velvet chairs all around the palace. And then we went into a little gray room. I guess it was a waiting room for the president, and his secretary came out. It was a male secretary, and he said, "The Presidente will now see you." The door swung open, and there he was standing there in a blue suit, and it was really quite exciting, because the Peruvian flag, and it was like a picture, And he asked if we wanted him to speak in French, Spanish, or English, and I said English. So he talked about a road he was putting up into the mountains for the people up there, and things like that. It was quite interesting to meet him, the president.
Yeah. Some of the memories that will always be there.
Exciting. And then we went to the ambassador had us go to meet not Belende. This was Alcora de Base. He was the bullfighter from Spain. And he was like Elvis Presley. And the girls were screaming and fainting, and they had police lined up and cordoned her off, and he got out of his...
Just what you want the audience to do when you perform.
Yes, but they don't do that. And he strutted out, and like a little proud peacock, and he strutted out, and we were standing there waiting to present him with a big plaque with a moose head on it. And he strutted right by us and went into the room where he prayed, and he came out, and one of the girls broke through the police lineup, and she ran up, and he signed the autograph, and she walked away and crying, all excited, and then he walked over to us, and we presented him with the plaque. And the amazing thing was, when he saw the moose's head, he pointed at the horns, the antlers, and he went like this, and he spoke in Spanish. I don't know what he said, but he pointed like that, like a, I would point like this, but he pointed with the horns, and he was very nice. And But there was
he probably told you I wouldn't want to fight a bull with those many horns.
yeah, probably, you know. Or,
Two's enough to worry
yeah.
about.
So anyway, it was quite exciting to be around him, because he was the they called him the Golden Boy. He was the golden bullfighter of his time.
Yeah.
And there was a young bullfighter I was more impressed with. Cathy was his name, and he was young, and he was fabulous. The bull came at him, and the wall was here, and he went into the wall. He spun into the wall, so there was no way of getting away, and the bull missed him by inches. And then he turned around and he did the same thing as a bull turn. He spun back into the wall again. You know, he did incredible things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I still don't like bullfighting. I don't like the blood and the gore, and I don't like to see the animals killed. It upset me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned children and your love of children.
Yes.
Number one, do you have any of your own?
Yes, I have a son.
How old?
He's 17 now. Yeah, he's taller than I am.
So that
yeah, he lives with. I've been married twice. He lives with my first wife, his mother.
is he musical, entertaining? Is he
No,
followed that?
no, he likes
An accountant?
he likes sailing. He's a boatsman. He loves sailing and things like that. He has his own boat, and he loves that.
TV shows. TV. You've done a lot of telethons. Cystic fibrosis. Have you got one coming up? You've got something coming up soon, haven't you?
I just did a cystic fibrosis show in Thunder Bay, and it's sort of my heart, because I didn't know anything about it the first year I did it. I did it with I think Paul Schaefer came up from the David Letterman show. He was on the show, and we did it. And the next one I did with Tommy Hunter. And I hadn't seen Tom for a long time. And the next one I did with Ray St. Germain. And one with Tommy, the first one, I didn't know anything about it, the disease. And it's an awful thing. It fills the little baby's lungs up with this mucus, and they have to beat them and see if they can pump it out. And they don't live that long, and it's a killing disease. And there was a young boy on, he was 21 years old, which is a very old age for someone with cystic fibrosis. And he was a singer, Kevin, and a wonderful singer and a wonderful performer. And then there was another little girl that was standing next to me, and Trish, and we talked, and in fact I was clowning with her, and her favorite tune was Bojangles, which I did. And the next year we lost both of them. And
sad.
Yeah, and she and apparently the lungs fill up and they drowned. They literally drowned, and
But you've taken
it's sort of
these type of situations.
Yeah.
Charitable, you know.
Yeah, it's
not because you're a do-gooder, but
well,
you sincerely have.
It's in fact, well, the entertainers I work with, the Good Brothers, they've been doing it for longer than I. In fact, they're going to come to town here. And they get on the show, and of course when they lose, they grew up with they see these kids every year. I've only been doing it for 3 years, and it affected me, but they get so emotionally involved that sometimes they start to cry on camera. And Ray St. Germain was his first time. He said he's done many telethons, and he said he watched Kevin, the film of him, the year before that he died, and Kevin was talking, and he said all of a sudden his eyes filled up with tears, and he wrote out a check, and he said, he just couldn't believe what had happened. It was
some more travels, and we're going to take a break in a moment. There's just so much of you that that I want the viewers to get to know and understand, and we're going to go back and talk about some of your music.
Okay. Fine.
North.
Oh, the North.
Just recently. Huh?
Yeah.
But as far north as one dare go, and still be civilized.
Me and Santa Claus, we went to up in the north to let me see now. First to Goose Bay in Labrador, and then went to Thule, and then to Alert, the very top of the world, and it was 24 hours darkness and little Arctic foxes flying around. We flew up in a Hercules, and my wife went up with me, and it was so funny because I'd done so many things for the government. She thought, oh, we'll go first class with the in-flight movies and all of it. And she got and they put her in a big parka and the whole bit, and boots and a balaclava. She's sitting on web seats. She's looking at, throwing darts at me.
And this was first class.
This is first class. And
Don't travel economy on that flight.
There was only one bathroom, and it was a toilet, and it had a canvas tarpaulin around it, and you had to you sort of perched up in the middle of nowhere, and but it was fun. It was real fun, and we flew up there and did a show for the Army, and they want me to go to Beirut and Lebanon and all through the Jerusalem and next year, so I may do it. I'm not quite sure about Beirut. That's the only thing that sort of, yeah.
Well, you did have an opportunity to go overseas, so to speak, but they were going to strap a gun on you, wasn't it?
Yes, that was when I was in Okinawa, and I got a call from my Tom Nemora, my agent, and he said, I have you a show for you in Vietnam. Well, I didn't know what Vietnam at that time was, so I said, okay, fine, and one of the acts said, you're not going to Vietnam, are you? I said, what's wrong with Vietnam? He said, well, you're not going over with Bob Hope and the big show. He said, they're going to strap a gun on you, you're going to have a tape recorder, and you're going to be on a rice paddy dancing to the troops. I said, oh, no. It wasn't quite that bad. I didn't go, but it would have been in Quonset Hut. So he said, but they said the first people they go after, the Viet Cong, is the entertainers, because they're lifting the morale of the troops. And he said they really do go after the entertainers.
Probably made a wise decision not to,
definitely.
To let that one pass.
Well, Martha Ray was hit by shrapnel when she was over with the Bob Hope show. And a lot of these entertainers don't tell you these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very dangerous, so I didn't bother going over.
More with Joey Hollingsworth in just a moment. We'll find out about the music and the man in just a moment. We'll be back. Joey Hollingsworth, my guest today on Around Town. Music, obviously quite a change over the years, and you've been at it a number of years.
My goodness, yes. I think the biggest change was, for me, was going from what they call club dates, going in and just having your tap shoes and a bowling bag and having a sheet of paper saying, do T for two, whispering, and bye-bye blues here, you know. Going from that to going to 3-piece arrangements, then to 4 and 10, then to go 20-piece arrangements when I went to Japan. You had to work with big bands over there. And then I started carrying conga drums with me, and then I started doing nightclubs. Well, the nightclubs all disappeared. Then I started doing lounge work, and the lounge work sort of disappeared. And disco came in. And I had to change. Yeah, I had to change from
tap dancing and,
Yeah.
and drums and disco. How did you work through that one?
Well, actually, what happened was I phoned up. I was working a club in Vancouver, the Marco Polo in Vancouver, and I phoned up the owner and I said, I'd like to do the club again. And he said, I'd love to have you. And he said, bring your band. I said, band? He said, I said, you have a house band? He said, not anymore. He said, everybody brings their own band. And I couldn't, that concept just, I couldn't understand it. So finally, I decided, well, maybe I better get my band. So I got a little group together, and then I found out that everything was carpeted, so I had to get a stage. Then I thought, well, nobody had lights, so I had to bring my own lights and sound, and didn't make any more money than I had when I had a bowling bag, you know. So it was, and then after a while, when disco came in, then we started losing work because they wanted disco bands. So I said, well, fellas, we have to upgrade this and improvise. So I got strobe lights going, and then I also had, I electrified the board that I was dancing on. So, and we went through flangers and wah-wahs and all kinds of things, so that when I tapped on a board through if this was a board, it would go, boo, you know, there would be, and then what I would do is I would put syncopated taps in that sweep, that do, so it would sound different, and it was fun. And it was entertaining for me and entertaining for, and one of the things is...
Are you happy that it didn't last that long? I mean,
yeah,
this
disco, yes.
Gadgets,
yeah, disco, you know. But the fact that I started dancing on, electrically dancing, was the difference between acoustic guitar and electric guitar. I was able to do things that I couldn't do acoustically, because you can do different polyrhythms, and then they can switch the sounds, and you can get completely different. I can sound like a herd of horses running through a cavern, you know, with these things. It's amazing, you know. So it's different, and you still don't lose your, what you call your chops, your feet. You know, you still don't lose them. You still are able to dance on a floor straight, or you can do all of this other type of dancing, which is different. You have to think differently. That's
what the styles of music, as we mentioned, have changed. You know, where's it at today? What's happening with music today? I mean,
well, rock and roll now has progressed from the 3-chord thing to very sophisticated, more into jazz, and tap dancers are dancing more sophisticated. The tap dancing is more sophisticated. We're going into polyrhythms that other tap dancers years ago didn't use and didn't even have any concept of. And it's just because when tap dancers first came on the scene, they were way ahead, and the drummers only had a sock cymbal and a bass and a snare, and they played like that, and they just did the beat. And then when tap dancers came on, they had independence, what they call independence, and you do a polyrhythm on one foot and beat time on the other foot, and then switch, and so the drummers watched that, and pretty soon they got independence on their hands, and they'd do one time on this, and they'd be doing double. And then catching up, and pretty soon they passed us. And then after a while, music did the same thing, and because a lot of the big bands carried tap dancers with them for their drummers. Like, I worked a show at the Harris Club in Lake Tahoe with Ernie Ford, and talked to Buddy Rich, who was there, and he was saying that he'd been a tap dancer. You know, a lot of drummers were tap dancers. Yeah. Because when my dad and mom worked at the old Brass Rail in London, Ontario, I used to go up and watch the groups, and the drummers would come back and say, "You tap dance? Here's a little show," and they'd show me a little step. And when you were young.
What your own preferences? Blues, jazz,
blues.
The blues.
Yeah, I love listening to. I think Ray Charles. You know,
who doesn't?
Oh, he's such a giant. Yeah, he's my favorite. Stevie Wonder, and like Stevie's more progressive. He does things that are more the. I think he's a Mozart of our time. He writes such wonderful things, you know.
You've done just so much. You've done some recordings.
Yeah, I did.
Gordon Lightfoot song.
Yeah, I did. I did an interview with Gord and Petula Clark, and he had a demo of a tune called "If You Got It," and I liked it very much. And I said, "Oh, gee, I like that tune." He said, "You like it?" I said, "I love it." He said, "You want it?" I said, "Can I have it?" He said, "You got it." And it came, so he gave me the demo, and my recording company, Apex Records, didn't get on it. It was supposed to be my follow-up records, because I had a record called All I Want to Do Is Tap and Yowie You Hungry Baby. Then I had another one called As Long As There's Shadow. And it was a country and western tune, and they didn't follow up on it. And so months went by, and I went to Japan. I came back, and finally Gord phoned. He said, "Are you going to do anything with that?" And I said, "The recording company hasn't done anything with it, Gord." And he said, I said, "You want it back?" And he said, "Yeah, could I?" Because he said, "I'm going to put it on an LP." So I said, "Fine." So I gave it back to him, and then he put it on his LP. And then years later, I heard it on the radio, and my wife said, "What?" You know, I told her the little story about it. So she said, "You should record it. You're going to record." So I said, "Okay." So I saw him at Massey Hall, and we were talking, and I said, "I'm going to record that song." So he said, "Oh, I'll give you a better tune than that old thing." So I said, "No," I said, "I want to record it because it had a significance because of the fact that my first trip to Japan, I stopped in Hawaii, clicked on the radio at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel, and Gordon Lightfoot's voice came on, and I always associated his voice and that song with Hawaii. So when I recorded it, I had a sort of beach sound in it, you know. And but I've done a lot of recordings, you know, and they're fun.
Tough business.
Yeah, I found that recording was probably the most expensive way to get any publicity, you know. And in fact, I didn't
There's a few
record.
payouts along the way.
Oh, I didn't record. I never did any payolas or anything.
I'm sorry. No, I wasn't intimidating there or thinking about that. But I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much to pay out
Oh, yeah. Well, like,
before you start to get anything back.
well, even like for example, when just
I just about called you a crook there. No.
no, it's just like for example, you had to fly. I'd fly to Winnipeg and promote my record. Well, the record company didn't pick up the flight, you know. So that's where you pay out. You know, you fly there and you promote it, and you fly here and you drive there, and you know, and do interviews and teeny bop shows and so forth and so on, and that's. But it's very hard to break through the recording industry in Canada. There's been a very few, like Gordon Lightfoot and Anne Murray, you know, and Anne was lucky with Snowbird.
Snowbird,
you know,
yeah.
and
It just, I guess that's it, isn't it? I mean,
just, yeah.
you know, you need that one thing, that one thing to click at the right time.
Well, I did a show with her, and she was telling me at the time, I just got a record out and everything, and I said, "What's the name?" An LP, and she said, and she didn't even think about Snowbird hitting, and it made it, and that was it, and she never looked back.
Yeah.
And but she eventually went to the States and did touring, and in Europe and all over the place, you know.
She is basically an American now.
Canadian.
She is Canadian.
Still Canadian.
Is she okay? And we can talk very briefly about industry here just for a moment. Is she still considered Canadian content?
Yes.
She is?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, although she's done an awful lot of things in the States, she lives in Canada, and she's very pro-Canadian. She's very proud of being Canadian, and I think one of the reasons that Canadians, especially entertainers, that are very proud of being Canadians is because when you travel and you're in Japan and China and England and France and Germany and all of the different countries, Canadians are so well respected and so it's such a nice feeling. They say, "Oh, Canadian," you know, and that's because
Gives
of
you that sense of pride.
pride, and that's because of the war. The Canadian soldiers were such gentlemen, you know, over there, and it was very, very exciting because they set a precedent. And so when you say you're Canadian, the doors open. I was in Japan, in Hiroshima, on the eve of the dropping of the bomb. Not when the bomb was dropped, but the anniversary.
Anniversary date.
And the anniversary date, and it's not a very good anniversary. And they were very salty, you know, naturally, the Japanese people, and they're very gracious people. And but I had my Canadian flag on, like a little emblem that it was Canadian, and as soon as they saw that, they changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and that's because of the Canadian soldiers.
Did you ever take a shot at South of the Border?
Yes, I was. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was. My manager was Gib Kerr, who managed Rich Little, and Rich was in Harrah's Club in Lake Tahoe with K-Star. He was her backup act at that time. He was a star, but he wasn't like the major star he is today. And so anyway, they were talking. Ernie Ford came down, and they got talking about Ernie needed a supporting act, and Rich said, "I know the person you need." So he mentioned my name, and Kerr got on the phone. He said, "Ernie Ford's here." He said he'd like you to come down, and he said an audition for him. I said, "Sure, I'd love to. Have him send my flight down." And he said, "No." He said he wants you to come down. I said, "You mean you want me to pay for my flight down?" He said, "Yes." And something in his tone, I said, "Is it important?" Because I'd worked with a lot of stars, and I wasn't starstruck. And he said, "Yes, very important." I said, "Okay, I'll pay for my flight down." So I flew down, and it was the strangest thing. He had an 8-piece band, and I put the music out. I said, "Could I have a microphone?" He said, "I can hear you." And he was sitting right there, and I didn't have a microphone. I sang and danced and played drums and everything. Wonderful, wonderful. And he got up and left, and the band congratulated me. They left, and the lights went down. I thought, this is a bad grade B movie. You know, it's awful. I've just blown $300 on a flight, which was, at that time, a lot of money for me. And so anyway, Jim Lokes, his manager, came back. He said, "Bob Precht is on the phone." He said, "Do you want to talk to him?" And I said, "Yes, okay." So I got on the phone, and he said, "Well," he said, "if you're good enough for their show," he said, "you're good enough for ours." I said, "Their show?" He said, "Didn't he tell you you're going to do his television show?" I said, "No." So anyway, he said, "Well," he said, "I've talked to Geb." He said, "We got the contracts." He said, "Just you sign it." And he said, and you're in there for 3 weeks. So I went and did Harrah's Club for 3 weeks with Ernie Ford. And Mr. Harrah is a billionaire. And I'd never worked for a billionaire in my life before. And it's a big difference. He gave me a car. He put me up in his private motel for his guests. Ernie, he put up in one of his homes. He had 2 maids to look after Ernie, one to cook, one to clean up. He gave Ernie a boat in the back of the dock.
Yeah.
He gave him a limousine and you know, just anything he wanted, it was there. It was just amazing, and what a gracious man. We had a big dinner at his place, and it was called Valhalla, and at that time it was worth $3.5 million, the home. Now, for $3.5 million nowadays is a huge place, but at that time that was a lot of. But he had about 4 or 5 of these places, and it was so big it had signs up saying "to the dock, to the swimming pool, to the garage," you know, and everything that you could possibly want he had. And like, I don't drink, so he had non-alcoholic champagne for me. He just had everything, you know. He just covered everything.
You brought up a point. Did you ever get involved in that? I mean, we hear about so many entertainers going through, and it's such a demanding struggle. I mean, in one's life, just trying to get through this whole business of what you're doing and to be a success. Did you ever get involved?
Never, ever. Like, I can truthfully say, I never got involved with drinking, or I smoke a pipe. but even now I don't very often.
But you had the right
pick it.
tobacco inside.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
The legal stuff.
As far as drugs are concerned, no, I never even, because I found that if I drank a Pisco one time in Peru, it was a Peruvian drink, and I had 2 little drinks, and we went to a club after, and we were, my boss and I, and we were talking, and one of the hostesses came over and started talking, and my boss was putting her on. He said, "This is the greatest flamenco dancer in the world." He said, "You know, Jose Greco, forget it. Watch him dance." So I said, she said, "Oh, is that right?" I said, "Yeah, watch this." And I stood up there, and those 2 little drinks of Pisco, and I went like this, and my feet were like lead. I couldn't move them. So I said, "That's enough. That's the end of that."
The communication.
Yeah, just gone, you know. Yeah. But no, I never, I loved tap dancing, and I didn't want anything to impair tap dancing for me. And
How
I
do you
worked.
handle the pressures? How do you handle the stress? And, I mean, as we talked earlier, it's such a demanding process that you go through and have to maintain.
Sometimes you get upset, you know, but the moment the lights go on on a show, you lock yourself into another space in your mind, and you just perform. Like Sammy Davis Jr. once said, as soon as he comes home after a show and he opens the fridge, and he said, as soon as the light goes on, he does 20 minutes. Yeah, but you know, it's. I just never got into drugs, and I don't advise it for any young people, because I think
You really don't need it.
You don't need it. I get high off performing, and I get high off of performing for children, and for people that really like in these clinics and things like that. And when you see little babies with cancer, and you think how fortunate you are to be able to perform for them and give them a few little bit of
A few moments of happiness.
Yeah, happiness. Yeah.
Lightness, yeah.
And so I would never want to take that God-given talent away from them, you know, and myself. You know, yeah.
And your ability to do that for them.
For them, yeah.
What's down the road for Joey? What aspirations? You going to be a movie star?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I would love to do some film work. I got a call last summer, and I read for Peter Yates, who was the director of Bullet, Steve McQueen's Bullet, and he did a lot of movies. And the casting director in Toronto phoned me up and said, "I'd like you to read for him for this part." It was a Cher movie called Suspect, and I was to play a detective, and she was interviewing me on the stand, you know, like questioning me. And I read for the part, and so he was very nice. He's from Australia, and he kept a lot of the actors and actresses. He handed back their pictures and everything. He thought he knew me. I said, "Well, maybe television. I've done a lot of No," he said, "I know your face from somewhere." So anyway, he says, "Can I keep this?" I said, "Certainly." And he was very nice, and the company went down to LA and did some more casting, and I was waiting. We were supposed to tape it in April, and I had already committed myself to Fort Steele, and once I make a commitment, that's it. And we waited and waited, and nothing happened. And so when they finally got back, I had to go to Fort Steele. I don't know exactly what happened. I think I went to see the show, the movie, and a man from Hamilton got the part. He was very, very good in it.
But you can see yourself sort of looking forward to maybe
it's a
medium
that I want to get into. I think it would be exciting. Lorraine Butler.
Probably a better dollar, maybe.
Yeah, it's different. Lorraine Butler, who's in Fort Steele, she just got a call. In fact, this summer, and she did a movie with Ted Danso from Cheers. I can't remember the fellow's name. Ted Danso or Dance?
Don't ask. I
from Cheers. Anyway, he for 3 Men and a Baby. Tom Selleck and Ted, whatever his You'll probably do an interview with her and she'll tell you all about it. But she did a movie and she said it was wonderful. Yeah. She danced with him and with Lloyd Bridges, and it was exciting for me to know that she was in a movie with him, you know.
So much, Joey, that we'd love to chat about and reminisce, but Fort Steele is happening as well.
Yeah.
Again, a super performance this year. Tink and Judy and the whole cast, yourself included, do such a tremendous job.
Well, thank you.
And becoming household words in this particular community, if not in BC.
This year's cast consists of the very talented Janice Flower on piano, Bill Hosey, who plays Wee Willie, and he's a wonderful singer. Let me see. My Heart, Lorraine Butler, who plays Stella. Tink and Judy, who spend literally months preparing the show, the writing of the show, and also all the music. And they get a great crew under the direction of Ian Pratt. So it's wonderful and great to work at Fort Steele.
Do we get to see what we've been talking about, Joey Hollingsworth? I mean, do we get to see you dance? Do we get to see you sing?
Yes. Well, we can't tell you everything that's going to happen. It's a sort of a celebration. But one of the things I think I can safely say that Granny has an opera. She did an opera this year, and so we're going to put on we're going to put on this opera, and Granny's opera. And but I do dance in the show and sing in the show, and of course Tink dances and sings, and Tink and I have been friends for years and years and years, just like Ray St. Germain and I were friends. And when Tink first approached me to do this show, I was doing a telethon with Helen Reddy, and Tink approached me, and so I couldn't do it, but later on I was able to do it, and I've been doing it for 6 years. So it's sort of exciting to get back here because we've met so many friends.
You like this area, don't you?
Yeah, love it. There's so many people here that we've become so close to. Irene and Gordon Proscuso, and you know, so many people.
The performances themselves on the stage, you get quite a kick out of that. I mean, you get the reaction right now, don't you, from the audience?
Well, the people they come from all over. Yeah. I mean, we don't just draw from Cranbrook. We draw from way down in the States. We had a lot of people from Georgia and down in the South, and it's so funny because I put on an accent. I'm Abe from Alabama, so I put this accent on, and so when people come from the South, they start talking to me, and I talk back, and they say, "Well, what you talking like that for?" It's cute. Yeah.
2 shows a day?
2 shows a day. Yeah, we do one at 2 and one at 8.
That's not an easy task either.
No, because you throw yourself right into the show, and it's a complete concentration. Before I used to do 4 shows a night with my band, and I thought, well, 2 shows a night is going to be easy, but it's more concentration, and you're bouncing off people, and your timing has to be, and the show runs, the clip of the show, there's no slowdown, and the pacing has to be, Tink likes a very fast pace for the show. And so you have to keep your pace up, and you have to keep the excitement, and
You're no toddler anymore either, are you?
No, no, I've been around, and around and around and around. Yeah, that's for sure.
Do I dare ask?
Pardon?
Do I dare ask?
Well, no, it doesn't matter. I'm 52. Well, I'll be 52 in September.
52 years old?
Yeah, September 5th.
And physically, with what you do, how do you... I mean, there are 40-year-olds, and I'm starting to think, and I'm getting a little embarrassed now. I mean,
well, dancing keeps you young. Like I watch dancers. Honey Coles is a dancer. He's 75 years old. I watched him dance, and he dances like a 25-year-old man. Just floats across the stage. Bill Robinson, I watched him when I was 6 years old, tap dancing, and he was in his 60s, late 60s at that time, and he dancing, just floating across the stage. So
we've only got a few minutes left, and I want to let our viewers have an opportunity video that was produced by Mike Turner here at
Oh,
Cranbrook
Mike.
Cable TV 11. Was it last year you
Yes, Mike did this. We had the idea, and Mike came out with one camera, and then he did a whole lot of editing, and it was fun. It was just fun to do it.
What's it called?
Walk a Mile in My Shoes.
Let's have a look at that, because I had an opportunity to view it last year myself, and I don't think too many people in this particular area have, but you do such a tremendous job, and I think it's a tribute to yourself and as well as Mike that we can produce something like this in this.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
It was actually done around Fort Steele.
It was done at Fort Steele, and it was so nice. They gave us all the facilities. We used everything at Fort Steele, the train, everything. You'll see all of and they opened places for us, and they gave us animals to use. It was great.
Yeah. You danced your way down the highway for a while.
Yeah, down the highway,
right.
and we wanted to get shots of the mountain, and yeah.
Let's have a look at it. Walk a Mile in My Shoes, is it?
You walk a mile in my shoes.
If I could be you, if you could be me, just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. If you could see you through my eyes instead of your ego, I believe you'd be surprised to see that you've been blind. Stop what you're doing now. Yeah, walk a mile in my shoes. Before you accuse, criticize and abuse. Now your whole world you see around you is just a reflection. And the law of karma says you got to reap just what you sow. You've been in the light of total perfection. You better be careful of every stone that you should throw. And if we spend the days whipping stones at one another, 'cause I don't think I'll wear my hair same way you do. Well, I may be just common people, but I am your brother. And when you strike out, try to hurt me, it's hurting you. Drop what you're doing now. Get on with it, get on with it. Before you accuse, criticize and abuse. Walking out in my shoes.
Walk a Mile in My Shoes. That's a nice bouncy tune.
Yeah.
I mean, and it looks
Mike
like
did
you
a great job, didn't you?
Yeah, it's fantastic. You look like you had a lot of fun doing this.
I did. We thought of the idea and so forth, and it just happened. It was fun.
Yeah.
I'd like to do another one out here. Mike, I'd like to do another one.
How's the pay? He wants to know how the pay is.
How the pay is? I pay you weekly, very weekly.
Okay, let's only got a few minutes left.
Yeah.
I wish we had lots more time. There's so many things to talk about, and I'm finding a very human and a dedicated person to the industry.
Jerry, it's been fun being interviewed by you, you know, because you make a person feel very much at home. You really do.
Well, we are at home. You're
Yeah,
at home.
that's
You're back
right.
at Cranbrook.
Yeah, that's right. I'm back at Cranbrook.
Again, the presentations at the theater, Fort Steele. 2 and 8, is it?
Yeah, 2 and 8.
But it's not every day.
No, we're off on Friday. That's our
your
day
night to
off.
howl.
Yeah, that's where we do our laundry and get ready for the next day. Yeah, it's and do our banking and things like that. Yeah, Friday is our day off. But other than Friday, we're there. We're running 6 days a week.
Immediately after, some TV shows coming up soon to be aired on one of the networks?
I'm going to do, I did Ray St. Germain's show again, and I did a few of them on the way out to Fort Steele, and that's going to be exciting to watch, because I don't really know what's happened with those shows. I did the Muhammad Ali Shuffle in one of the shows, and I had to run upstairs, you know, and had to jump at the top, like, you know, like Rocky's theme, you know. And of course, they did it with one camera, so you had to do it 5 different times. So by the time you talk about in shape, yeah. But it should be fun to do, to watch rather, because I don't really know exactly how the editing is going to come out.
You've got no air dates yet, but
No, I don't have any air. It'll be in the fall. It'll be in the fall. Yeah.
CTV or CBC?
CTV.
CTV.
Yeah. And in fact, Ray's coming out this year. I've invited him out to see the Fort Steele show. So he said he's going to bring his whole family out. He said I want to see the show and see you in it. So and everybody.
Yeah. But after the show's over, any immediate plans? You're going to take a little vacation or relax for a while?
Well, I'm going to do some teaching. Some of the schools have asked me to do some choreography and teaching at their schools, dance schools, big dance schools in Saskatoon and so forth. And I'm going to do that, and then I'll be going back to Toronto, and there's a few things lined up already, and they're still talking about going to Jerusalem and so forth for that. But there's still the Beirut part of it.
Be careful.
Yes. Yeah.
A pleasure.
My pleasure. Believe me. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Joey Hollingsworth.
Yeah. Really appreciate it.
For Cranbrook Cable TV, Channel 11, and Around Town, I'm Gerry Ridgley.
Got it. Don't lose it, girl. It's got to be the one creative thing that's left for you and me. And if you find it, don't lose it on the very next day. Lock it in your soul.
Before you leave, please subscribe to our channel. It will not only help you stay up to date with our videos, it will also be a nice way to show your support for the volunteers who make this project possible. Thanks for watching, and please tune in again.